All right, and I'll count us into the show. Three, two, one.
All right, welcome to episode 119 of the Narcissistic Music Disorder.
Morning, buddy. How are you?
Great. It's a special day today, John.
It's a special day, dude, and so I'm excited about this, and I'm excited to talk to our guest, not only about the subject that I'm super excited about, but also I saved um this talking point I have for when we got started because it's about you, Scott.
Oh,
So first of all, why don't you introduce our guest, and then we'll start from there.
our guest today is Ross Cooper. He's from Lubbock, Texas. Some notables from Lubbock, Texas, John, and listeners, Buddy Holly,
Of course.
Natalie Maines, Mac Davis, Joe Ely, Delbert McClinton, and
Wow.
Amanda Shires, just from people our audience will be familiar with,
So
and Ross
first of all,
Cooper.
yes, and Ross Cooper, thanks for being here, Ross. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah.
So in that list of notables, I just want to mention two names that jumped out to me. Number one, I just was rocking 2 nights ago, Lord of the Highway, the record by Joe Ely. Oh, you talk about, and we'll get into our subject matter today, but what a kick-ass record that is, man. And I don't remember what, Ross, are you familiar with that, with Joe Ely? Are you a Joe Ely guy at
Very,
all?
very much. So we grew up listening to the debut record, the self-titled Joey
Uh-huh.
record, and it's still probably an album that I go back and listen to a few times a year. It's kind of a perfect album.
Is that the one that has I had my hopes up high?
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
has Never Spoke Spanish to Me,
Yeah.
On the Drag, Sucking a Big Bottle of Gin,
Yep.
um, Jolie Blonde. It's a perfect record, and it's perfectly mixed too. I think that they recorded that with I think Don Caldwell had a good amount to do with that record, and then of course Lloyd Maines is playing all the pedal steel on it. Um, but it still sounds really good, and the songs are great. But that was going to be right after, I guess his kind of, I'm sure somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but um, that was the first kind of debut right after the Flatlanders.
Yes.
Right.
And not it, and in reading the Flatlanders book too, I wouldn't say even that it's the first big debut record from Joe Ely after he left the Flatlanders. It was like reading that book. It seems like the tone was they were like the band that wasn't a band, the
Right.
Flatlanders,
Right.
just like these really cool guys that were kind of 10 years past the beat movement, because it finally made its way to West Texas in the early 70s, and they were really into Buddha and poetry and country music, and then you
There's a
just
list of things you never hear grouped together. Is
yeah, and then
Buddha and poetry and country music.
but then you just happen to have like those guys just happen to be Jimmy Dale Gilmore and Butch Hancock and Joe Ely, who's given us
I
some of
know.
the best songs ever.
I'll Have you guys ever heard? I'm sure you have. Um, the um the Texas Tornadoes version, or Doug's version of "She Never Spoke Spanish."
I'm
Uh,
sure I
uh,
have.
it's so good, man. That's such a great tune, and
Yeah.
I love it so much. It doesn't, for some reason, I've yet to figure out how to like translate it, and I should find. I bet there's a Joe Ely version where he's just by himself, just a acoustic version of it. But it's such a, I love that tune. I think that's a great moment for him. And that Lord of the Highway record, you said, the debut still sounds good, recorded really. The Lord of the Highway, I don't know if they were like pushing, to maybe break him a little bigger with Lord of the Highway. It sounds super dated, man. The production choices, things are a little washy and verb, but it's got
I'm pretty unfamiliar with that record. Is it that would have been early '80s?
I would say early mid. Yeah. It's, who's on it is, it's him, obviously Joe Ely, but it's Bobby Keys on sax, right? The Stolen
Yeah.
sax
Love
player.
it.
Bobby Keys
Yeah.
is on there, and then the lead guitar is David Grissom,
Oh,
which is killer. I mean, he's just the man, you know.
David played with him when they were on tour with Joe Strummer in the mid 80s. So that would all check out.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right. Because didn't Ely, if I'm right, like in my Clash book, they toured. They toured with the Clash.
Yeah, Joe Strummer was a big fan of Joe Ely, which
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Which is why the Clash are so cool.
Joe to me is he's a rock star. Like, I mean, he's just a rock. That to me, that's kind of the he's kind of the goal in a lot of ways. And I don't know if whoever's keeping up with his Facebook right now, whether it be Sharon or whomever, does a really good job of just kind of typing these little vignettes around pictures. And there was a post, I'm sure you could find it, that was kind of commenting on that time of the mid 80s where Joe basically just kind of called it. You know, he called it quits for like, 4 or 5 years.
yeah.
And I saw my name and face on these billboards, and we were on this track to become this America's next big band. And to paraphrase, I think it was saying something along the lines of, it felt very disingenuous, and he disconnected from it, and then just kind of threw up his hands and was like, the hell with it.
Yeah.
Which is also pretty incredible. I love that. I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, for sure. So this in mind, Scott, what's our topic today?
Our topic is alt country albums, our favorite alt country records.
And I should say this too. This is what I wanted to say off air, and then I wanted to say that, Russ, I'm going to tell you something. Your name, as far as the NMD podcast here, I cannot tell you the number of times. As a matter of fact, I found your name somewhere in an old show, because Scott Benting here is a champion of the cause, man. And he has turned on so many folks to your music. And I don't want to embarrass him, but for musicians and songwriters and artists, you look for those people who are going to, who are going to further the cause for you, right? They're going to, we all say it. What is it? If someone has a bad experience, they'll tell 10 people. And if they have a good experience, they'll tell 3. It's something like that. It's some weird ratio. Yeah. Scott and his NMD, he will tell strangers in the grocery store. So you have a huge advocate in the NMD podcast, and especially Scott. And so it's such an honor for us to have you today. And for our viewers and listeners, they probably all go, it's our buddy Ross Cooper. We talk about him all the time, man. He's every show we're chatting about.
Featured on episode 86, the song Strangers in a Bar. And then
that's right.
Yeah, I've been a fan, Ross, since I Rode the Wild Horses came out. And then I went back and got Give It Time.
Yeah, that 2012. That was songs that I'd written when I was I wrote some of those songs when I was like 19. Whoa, gosh.
I like Dreamers. Dreamers is great.
Thank you. I was so young when I wrote a lot of those songs. I almost took that record off, but
and then you came out with I Rode the Wild Horses. And if you don't know, Ross used to be a bareback rodeo rider,
which is
in your family. Your dad was saddle bronc, right?
Dad rode saddle bronc, yeah, and so did my brother. And then my mom was barrel racer and Miss Rodeo Texas in the 70s, and so second generation cowboy from a rodeo family. And shortly after college, I moved to Nashville, where I've been here. Good gosh, coming on 13 years now.
Oh wow, you're in Nashville currently. That's where you live.
So
what a change that town is.
I asked Ross, if you remember, I asked you back in 2020, you were doing a private show here in Holland, Michigan. And obviously we'll know what happened. COVID came. Yeah. And I asked you if we could come to wherever you were staying, hotel or whatever, and interview you.
Yeah.
And so I've been bothering you
No,
I
I'm
asked you a few years ago, I don't know if you remember this. I asked you, did you write the song Queen of the Highway with Andrew Combs? Because it sounds like something he would write.
yeah, it was me, Andrew, and Jordan Lanning, who has produced some of the Andrew stuff and has produced a ton of different albums. Jordan's great. Yep, that was all.
So I
Yeah, that
have,
all in Michigan thing. It was it would have been April of
yep.
2020, and would have been for it was like a retired police foundation show
Oh,
at
okay.
a performing arts center or
Nope.
something.
Cool.
There was a string of those shows that we would do them, and they were the oddest things. First of all, for sure, Back the Blue. It's one of the most thankless jobs in the world.
Amen.
But you'd have these lifers, these like 80, 90-year-old, retired policemen that we'd play a show to, and they just stare at us like, and we have tattoos and stuff and long hair. They would stare at us like we're straight from the zoo. They were all very, very nice. But yeah, that was one of those COVID shows that got canceled.
So
So,
I wanted to ask you about in the song I Rode the Wild Horses, there's a rodeo call in there. Is that you doing that?
Yeah, on the outro.
Yeah, on the outro of the song.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, that's me, and I'm referencing a really dear friend of mine. He's a great friend of mine, and he's my brother's best friend. His name's Heath Demos,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
Heath I'd asked him. We were in the studio. I'd recorded that record with Eric Massey here in East Nashville, who Eric has, he did the Miranda Lambert double disc. He did the newest um oh goodness gracious, Waylon Payne.
That record is it's different than Chasing Old Highs and Lightning Heart in a way that it's more like atmospheric. In
Parker.
some, like Strangers in a Bar has that spacey sound at the beginning, and a lot of that record has that throughout it. And I love, I mean, I think that record's a masterpiece.
Thank you.
Chasing Old Highs is great. The song New Orleans is a gem.
Thank you.
Sleeping with a Stranger is a song that I think sounds like if George Strait sang that song right now, it would be a #1 hit, Ross. It sounds like an old Conway Twitty song or something, throwback
that's what you
to the
said to
80s.
me. That's what you said to me, Scott.
Yeah.
The Conway Twitty.
So we called Heath when I was in the studio making I Rode the Wild Horses, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna do kind of a throwback kind of announcer voice. That one of the most famous rodeo announcers who has since passed was a guy named Hadley Barrett, who had just that classic, really cool voice. And it's like, we're gonna do like kind of a Hadley thing at the end of I Rode the Wild Horses. Like, what's the rankest horse you've been on? And he's like, Tiger Warriors.
Tiger Warrior.
Said it, he was like 88 on Tiger Warrior, and like maybe Clovis or somewhere. Oh gosh, I don't remember. Anyway, but so that's where all that came from, and yeah, it was like a 20-second phone call that ended up kind of influencing that outro on that song.
Well, the reason I figured out that you have narcissistic music disorder is a line in Strangers in a Bar where you say, quoting songs nobody's heard to a girl on her last nerve.
Yeah,
now, only somebody with NMD knows songs nobody's heard.
That's still I married that girl, and she's and I still she's got phenomenal taste in music, first of all. But yeah, there's
so that song's autobiographical.
Yes and no.
I love the song. Your pauses, oh my god.
I'd written that song around the same time that I'd met her, and so yes and no. It's coincidental for sure, but it doesn't give it doesn't give the woman in the song enough credit for sure. You know, I think had I'd known her then as well as I do now, obviously that song would have been 1,000% different. But I hardly knew her then. But it was I couldn't say that if I had not met her that song would still exist.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, it's a gem. It's a masterpiece of a record, and I love that track.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Scott,
what's
what's your
your,
topic today?
What is your first alt country record, Ross?
You never gave the topic. I don't think you didn't tell our
Yeah, I
listeners
did.
what
Alt
the top-
country.
You did. Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's our alt country. What favorites?
Yeah.
Okay, Ross, what's your first one?
I want to go chronologically with my answers because I think that's the best way to do it.
All right.
My first one's going to be Hollywood Town Hall from the Jayhawks, and it was released in 1992. So
Well,
I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being too, I know this is not a word, but I didn't want to be too tropey in my answers. I wasn't gonna like, I wanted to make sure it would be so easy to reference like Wilco or Uncle Tupelo or Bottle Rockets, right, building blocks of what we consider alt country. And it's like when you interview songwriters and you ask them about their favorite country singer songwriters, they're gonna list Townes Van Zandt and they're gonna list Scott Clark, and that's great, and those people should be listed for sure. But I started answering this like, okay, what are the most significant alt country records to me? So Hollywood Town Hall, I was living in Lubbock, and I would go into, there's a great record store there called Ralph's Records, and the guys from Thrift Store Cowboys used to work there, and which was Amanda Shire's first band. We'll talk about Thrift Store here in a little bit. Or I should say Amanda was more of a kind of more sideman role in that band. And then there was a phenomenal songwriter working at that record store named Daniel Markham, who is still an amazing artist. I would go in there in my mid-teens, and these guys, they didn't know who I was. They had no reason to, and I knew who they were, and I knew their albums, and I looked up to them and was a fan. And so I would just ask them what was cool. And back then, if you were in your mid-teens living in Texas, odds are there's probably 75-85% chance that you're going to be listening to a Texas country record. And back then it would have been like Pat Green, Corey Morrow, et cetera. So there's nothing wrong.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the tone was in that part of West Texas. People were not listening to the Jayhawks. It was, people were outside of musicians. People were not listening to Wilco. Even like the majority of people weren't listening to old 97s. Like all that stuff that I found early on, it was because of that record stores, because of Ralph's Records. And I remember asking either Daniel Flewitt or Daniel Markham, one of the guys there, I needed a rec, and they were like, have you heard of the Jayhawks? And I'd never have. And I think that first song is Waiting for the Sun.
Yeah,
it is.
That really cool. Just, it could have been a Petty record.
Well,
roll that riff.
So Ross, we've had this argument on the show around. I think, now that I think about it, I think that the Jayhawks toured with Petty. They toured with Petty during like Tomorrow the Green Grass, that era.
Yeah.
Which would have been, I think, the next record from the Jayhawks. But dude, that Waiting for the Sun riff and Last Dance with Mary Jane are pretty close. That A minor G, that riff. If you listen to Waiting for the Sun and you listen to like the start of Mary Jane's Last Dance by Tom Petty, they're dangerously close. I mean, you could make a case.
You have the single piano notes that come in, and then I honestly, Last Dance with Mary Jane obviously is
great.
It's part of the zeitgeist. But
I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm not going to have you.
It's a cool record.
It's a great riff. I like both the songs. And this is going to happen, I'm sure, a bit in this episode too. Sure. On my list, I will jump to the fact Scott knows this. Jayhawks were a huge band. Like the most records I own are Jayhawks records and Jayhawks singles and Jayhawks promotional.
Yeah, I mean, like it would have been. I would probably say that like Rainy Day songs or More Rain. Those are probably, when we think, I don't like commercially and sonically, they're probably, I don't know if you could say better, but bigger maybe, but
definitely bigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's probably more songs that I love from those. I mean, they're just great songs, but I love bands that stay together for a while. I like the early records when there's nothing that's out of bounds, when, you know, you allow yourself to make mistakes and you allow yourself to. I'd never heard anything like the Jayhawks, you know, like nothing like it when but I got through Waiting for the Sun, and then Crowded in the Wings is probably my favorite record. And then Take Me With You When You Go is probably my second favorite. I mean, it's a great record.
There's not a bad song on it. There really isn't. Martin's song's a great tune. Is that on the end of that? It is.
That's your last song.
It is. And so I on my list here, my first one is Jayhawks. I have catalog because I could almost pick anything. I
told John when I texted him about this episode, I said, we're doing alt country with Ross Cooper. You can't pick 5 Jayhawks records, John.
Because I mean, I had this thing where I got hip to the Jayhawks off this Joe Henry record called Short Man's Room. And I was like, God, you know, it sounds so good. The guitar just sounded so good to me. I'm a guitar guy. I'm that dude. And it was the Jayhawks. It was Gary Loris, you know, it was the Jayhawks backing Joe Henry. Yeah. And so I did the same thing. I sort of Jayhawks. I get Hollywood Town Hall, see a video. I remember seeing the video for Waiting for the Sun. Like, you didn't see that, you know. I got lucky. Somehow I would catch these little pockets of video time where I saw Waiting for the Sun back in the day, like in MTV's early days in the 80s. I guess for me, it would have been 87-ish. I saw Jason and the Scorchers, Absolutely Sweet Marie video. Whoa. And it was like, holy shit, you know, wow. And then, you know, whatever, Safety Dance came on by Men Without Hats or whatever it was back then, right?
Yeah.
The thing about the Jayhawks I like is, so I got Hollywood Town Hall like you did, love every song on it, got Blue Earth, the first record, and was like, that was a dead country record, man. That's a country record. It's not alty much at all. Gary Loris is such a cool guitar, but that's a great band. And then I got the whole catalog, and I remember when Mark Olson left the Jayhawks, the other singer, Gary Loris's counterpart, his Phil and Don Everly kind of thing. But I will tell you, out of all the Jayhawks, I love the later Jayhawks now too, you know, where Mark Olson's been gone for a while, and we have, you know, I'd say they're more, I don't want to say poppy, but maybe that's what I mean. They're more produced. There's more, you know, they're a little more Beatle-y, you know, and a little less flying. Sure. Yes, exactly. Smile's a great record. Yeah, but for me, go ahead. I'm sorry, man.
No. That's a great point. That poppy, in that you hear the Beatles inspiration,
right?
You know, there's this huge AAA station in Nashville, local station called Lightning 100, and hell, they were playing that latest, like a real big Jayhawks single that came out. I guess it's been out for a while, but I think it's just called Blue.
Yeah,
Blue.
Right. Yep.
They're playing like it, and it's been a little while since Lightning 100's played it. But they used to play the hell out of that song, you know, talking about a band that's 40 years old, you know.
They have been, and you know, we're different. And when you were talking about the scene in Texas, you know, when you were growing up and what it was like, and like you said, no one was listening to Wilco, no one was listening to Jayhawks. Now, there's something about us being from the Midwest
Yeah.
and close to Minneapolis.
Right.
So in Chicago. So we were like, even back in the 80s, we were getting bands that would play fairly close to us. Like, you know, even me in my little town, probably 30 minutes away, like the Replacements and Husker Du and Soul Asylum and Matthew Sweet and
Yeah.
the Jayhawks. And so we would get some of that. And to us, I thought it all started, this is silly, but you know, I thought the center of that universe was the Replacements for some reason, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I mean, Gary Loris said he didn't start playing electric guitar till he was 35 years old.
And he's
some I mean, can you imagine? He goes, yeah, I played classical and I played, you know, then he got into rockabilly. I mean, he's an older guy. He's far older than I am, I think. But, and I want to say, yeah, I think it was like 35. It was a late number like that. And to me, I've said this to a bunch of people. Nobody cares to listen. That's what NMD is about. But I've told that dude, like Gary Loris from the Jayhawks as a guitar player would be like Jimmy Page to a normal person. You know, I mean, I just followed it heart and soul. Love the Jayhawks. So that was my pick too. Scott, what's your first pick?
Dances for the Lonely from American Aquarium from 2009.
Okay, cool.
I owe you that one, Scott. I owe you the band. You know that. You know I owe you American Aquarium because I figured out a couple weeks ago why I was biased. And Ross, you don't know me well enough to know what a narrow-minded dick I am. But I think I thought American Aquarium was that jam band.
The American Aquarium
Rescue Unit. So I confused those. I thought American Aquarium was like a jam band, hippie jam band. And I dig that.
Far from it. Yeah.
Far from it. Right. I know. Now I listen thanks to Scott. Yeah. So what's so great about it, Scott?
That's my introduction to the band. So just, I mean, DJ, as I've said before, is a savage with a pen. I mean, the songs that he wrote on that record, I Hope He Breaks Your Heart, Tennessee. But I Hope He Breaks Your Heart. He told a story on Robert Earl Keen's podcast about seeing his recently ex-girlfriend at a show with another guy. And he did that song right in front of them at the show. Just, that is so gangster. If you know that song, I Hope He Breaks Your Heart, I Hope You Cry All Night. It's just, oh my God.
Pretty much hits it all, doesn't it?
It just, the lines he has in that song, just, I mean, to do that right in front of her, he says, one of the lines he says, you fuck like a woman, but you love like a little girl.
Oh, God.
Dude, that's savage.
Oh, so Russ, I'm sorry, Scott, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I have a little rant about that. So why does your
Russ
record...
doesn't know that you get into these moments. Please, listen, it's like we're a married couple and there's a guest in the house where you shove everything under the rug until they leave after dinner. But so, I'm gonna let you have this rant in front of our friend Ross, who's gonna be visibly uncomfortable.
I don't think American Aquarium has an explicit rating on their records, and Ross has it on his for the word shit. That's ridiculous.
You are so lucky, Ross. I'm glad you got that. I'm glad you got that. In
your latest song, you can't use any other word there that wouldn't sound ridiculous besides shit. Everybody wants to be a cowboy.
Right. So
why do you get the explicit rating on your record?
I don't know.
Congratulations, dude. Well, in the 90s, that would sell 100,000 more records. I mean, I remember hearing about it.
Why didn't I, or why did I?
Why did you? It says explicit when, like, on your songs, on like Life's Too Short to Live in Dallas.
Yeah, for I guess FCC. If any, not that anybody would play. I mean, I guess you do run the risk of, like, if somebody were to call a radio station and be like, "Hey, I want to request the new, Ross Cooper song, Everybody Wants to Be a Cowboy." And, let's say you have a 19-year-old college DJ who doesn't know or whatever, and then you get hit with a $10,000 fine. So that
Are you getting radio play on that song?
no,
Oh,
no, we were
what are
gonna.
these A&R guys doing? What are they doing?
Well,
Scott, there
mean,
are no A&R guys anymore.
you're
Ross
asking
Cooper
me-
is Ross Cooper's
You're
A&R
asking
guy.
me what I'm doing.
I'm Ross Cooper's A&R guy.
We didn't work it as a we didn't work it as a radio single. Honestly, I didn't have enough money to do it on the so we pushed let's see, I forgot what the focus tracks were. It's all kind of been a big blur, in a good way. Most of it, some of it, half of it. But we worked a radio single to Texas, and then we worked some focus tracks to Americana. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's just expensive. It's really.
Yeah, John knows.
And I just it was kind of one of those things, like, full transparency, when the DSPs have been what they are, it's spent so much money working radio where your target audience isn't listening to radio much anymore. They're finding music on socials and then listening to it on Spotify. So
That's exactly the case.
And we're in this, I will never be like the guy on the front porch yelling at kids to get off my lawn and just trying not to change with the times. I do think that it's more difficult now than it ever has been, because there's not one formulaic way of doing it. Used to, it was, you get a little buzz on a song, you hire a radio promoter, you work it to radio, you go visit every station you can, you play those markets, and then in 6 weeks to 2 months you revisit, and now it's like, I have a good friend who manages some pretty big artists that we reconnected about, I don't know, 2 months ago, and she had said something that just stuck with me. She was like, because I kind of walked away from the team I'd had and have been kind of rebuilding and etc. And she was like, I hate to say it, but you just need to try to like really get something going on TikTok. And I had this thing that, like, yeah, I had this thing in my mind, and I have so many friends on the other side of the table that have told me that, and I understand what they mean by that, and it's because it's the new grassroots way of doing things. But on the other side of that too, if you're a pessimist like I can be sometimes, they're telling you that they don't know the answer. For the first time, these people that have spent decades in the industry, they're what that communicates to me is they're trying to tell you to go viral, but nobody can predict virality, first of all. And we know that, and I think what a lot of people say too, that it's a numbers game. Well, to catch the algorithm, you really need to be posting a lot. Well, that's yes and no. That I think you could prove or disprove any point that you want to make, but with me, it's a thing when I look at my numbers, and I'm very aware that I could be just making excuses for myself because I don't like TikTok. Like, I've been making records since I was 18 years old. I'm a songwriter who is, I've been pissed off at writing songs because it's like you're throwing shit into the ether right now. It's like the whole, like, if I write the best song tomorrow and it doesn't go viral on TikTok, am I not an artist? Like, obviously that's a crazy thing to think about, but that should not be the metric of where music is. And I always wanted to put out records. I wanted to put out full-length albums. I wanted to tell stories because I write stories. I write songs. And I'm not gonna, whether they're good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's I have a really difficult time with just releasing a single and throwing the spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks to a listenership and a viewership that's not my target demographic anyway.
Right.
Right.
18.
Right. Well, the thing is, I mean, if you want a hit song, your best bet is your song is playing while someone gets hit in the nuts on TikTok with something.
Right.
I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's or you can find the right influencer who happens to be playing your song while they're doing something that's not related to your song at all.
Yeah.
And it's been that way. I mean, this music game is as you know, Ross, is pretty much everyone nowadays knows. I mean, there was a time probably 25 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, probably longer now that I think about it, where there was a number. You had a figure at Top 40 Country Radio. You had a financial number that if you could pay that number, you could almost guarantee you could at least hit Top 40.
Yeah.
And that number would haunt you as when you were in your van in this town, right? Playing for, oh man, $400. Amazing. Thank God we can get to the next thing. It would kill you because you'd go, man, I wouldn't be doing this shit if I had this figure, this number, this money, this clump of money. I'd be playing these bigger markets because it was all this thing. It fed itself. I got a top 40 single so I can play the better gigs and get the better money and get to the next place and get a van that the muffler is on. And, we don't put, it's just, you're right. And that's a lot of insight. God, man, we've gotten real business wise about this thing. But that's it. It's not, and I am, Russ, congratulate. I'm very right. Not stand on your front porch, shake your fist. And I'll leave here and get on my front porch and tell people to go slow down my road because there's kids. I'll do shit like that. But it's just because it's not right or nobody. That's not true. Not nobody. There's audience for everything, and you found an audience, and that's half the battle. Who appreciate your art, but it's not. What are you going to do? Are you going to go viral on TikTok and go play every market? It's TikTok. You can't afford to go play those markets. Radio, you used to be able to build your audience in. I was told build your home market as, be the biggest band in your hometown, be able to sell out a mid-sized theater, and then find one other major market. And in the Midwest, it was Chicago, Milwaukee, Nashville, Cleveland, St. Louis. Yeah. So you could, and it had to be within enough a close enough distance of your home market that you could get to it on a cycle. You could build it. Shit, man, you can't go to California from Michigan and then go, well, we got to get back to California in 6 months,
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm shaking my fist right now.
No, I mean, but it's frustrating because it feels like it's for kind of road dog type of artists. It's hard to know how to work anymore, but at the same time, it's like at the end of the day, I remind myself that I love this and that nobody put a gun to my head on this. I chose this to myself. Like, for myself. I have a college degree. I could have done anything. I could have done something else, but I never wanted to do anything else. So I've always kind of thought, like, you either realize or you don't that there's a game. And if you do realize there is a game, you have to make the decision whether or not you're going to play the game or not. And if you don't play the game, you can't bitch about what happens when you don't play the game. But if you also,
it goes well with your song, Ross, A Good Living, because it seems like that's a song you kind of wrote to yourself to remember.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used to write such sad songs. But like, how freaking lucky am I that I get to do this?
Right.
How lucky am I?
I love how you say, like, I'm gonna go out and cut the grass, go to Robert's with your wife and get a burger and split some beers. And that's just so cool.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, right now, for me personally, it's trying to figure out how to work again and work more as a 35-year-old married man with a child on the way.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yes, congratulations. There's a game changer for you.
Yeah. And I said at the end of last year that I'm gonna start saying no to some things. and even if that means that I'm going to be playing less, and start saying yes to some things that fulfill me, you know, as a person, and that do more for my sanity. Because what happens is, if you know, and this is not like a new thought. This is something I've been very aware of for a few years now, but it's not fair to music, and it's not fair to your craft if your metric of happiness is dependent on the success of the music. You know, I can't look at my guitar and resent it because the last song I wrote on it didn't make me $1 million. That's bullshit. That's not why I started doing this. You think when I wrote my
Yeah,
first,
right.
like, if you were to ask the 12-year-old version of me if like why I wrote that song, I'd tell you because it was really fun. And
Yeah.
I created something that wasn't there before. And that's like, that's awesome. That's the
That's
best.
the end game, right? That's the end game, truly. Is
So,
you want to put something out there that is yours and wasn't there before.
and let me, you know, for brevity, if I go viral on TikTok tomorrow, you gosh damn right, like I'm gonna follow up on it and hustle my ass off. But you know, you take whatever you can get when you can get it. But I guess my whole point is trying to put all your eggs in the basket of trying to go be the next viral sensation is not
right.
You can't predict it. That's why it's, you know, you can't predict something going viral.
Yeah, there's
So
very few Zach Bryans or Oliver Anthony's out there.
and, so I have a buddy from back in Texas, Josh Weathers, who's one of the best singers on this planet. You probably, if you don't know his music, you're going to very soon. And if you don't know who he is, you've probably still seen the video of, you know, a country dude on a, you know, playing a Telecaster in the theater singing I Will Always Love You in the record key of Whitney Houston. Like that's who Josh Weathers is. He's a
killer. Wow.
He's a son of a gun. But you know, for him, the guy standing or sitting in front of the camera with his guitar singing songs on TikTok works because he can sing the phone book. Like he's got he can sing anything. And so all of his videos are just him singing, and it sounds phenomenal. But he's also got one of those like 1%er type of voices. I don't have that.
My best bet is someone gets hit in the nuts. Well,
yeah, right. So
my shit plays in the background.
So it's hard to it's hard to figure out what works. I think that TikTok and all that can be such a useful tool, but as far as like it being the end all is it's not correct.
Yeah, amen. So what's your next pick, Ross? What's your next alt country record, but pre-TikTok?
Chronological order. I don't. This might come down to the month. I'm going to guess. Okay, we're gonna go with Faithless Street, Whiskey Town,
dude,
1995.
So it's a great record, man.
Yeah,
great record.
Yeah,
what a. And there you go, right there. There's another, I mean, career arc that you would have never predicted. I mean, I thought Whiskey Town was a really good band. And I still do.
Yeah.
I didn't think they were the Jayhawks.
Right.
I mean, I know that sounds terrible to say.
I didn't see Heartbreaker
like
coming. No,
I didn't see any of that coming. Although they were, I thought, again, I go back to these guys. I thought Whiskey Town were like the Replacements, and they were back then too. Remember, those shows were really ramshackle affairs, man. Really, the Jayhawks were like, you know, the Everly Brothers, and they had those tight harmonies, and musically,
band.
And Whiskey Town were, I mean, I could go upstairs. I have a video VHS of a show that's, I mean, it's rocky, man. Yeah. But the songs, you couldn't, man, that has Drank Like a River on it.
Yeah. Well, and Midway Park was that was like just that guitar riff coming in.
Yeah.
It's the best way to start an album. That that song.
What else is on Faithless Street, Ross? What else is on that record? I know Drank Like a River's on there. Is
Dream, What May Seem Like Love.
What May Seem Like Love. Yeah,
Faithless
that's a
Street,
good.
Mining Town. If he
I
can't.
like that tune.
Black Arrow, Bleeding Heart, Matrimony, which was I guess
Caitlin Carey's
Carey's
tune.
song. Excuse Me while I Break My Own Heart. Actually, that was on the reissued version, because I did a little homework. They'd so after they got signed to, was it Bloodshot? No, that would have been hold on. They got
was it Lost Highway? No.
It was Outpost, and it was a subsidiary of Geffen. So they re-released it like 3 years later, and then you got Excuse Me While I Break My Own Heart, Empty Baseball Park, which I loved. Yesterday's News, 16 Days, Lo-Fi Tennessee Mountain Angel. I mean, the reissued version is really
good.
It had Too Drunk to Dream on it too, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great. There's a line in Drank Like a River. I don't know why I like it. It doesn't, I've said this before. Like we talk about Mike Cooley's writing sometimes, like, it's not sing-songy, rhymey, sometimes I'm like, oh, I would have put a word there that rhymed. That's stupid, but I do that. But there's a line in Drank Like a River where he just says he's hanging out drinking beer with his brother-in-law. I don't know why I like that line so much. It doesn't rhyme with anything. It's killer. I can picture it, Brown bagging it tonight behind some tavern. That's a great line too, man.
Well, it's I think we're kind of seeing that resurgence of the type of songwriting that is hyper specific, and like especially reference TikTok, where there's a lot of this the kind of that Midwest emo type of balladeer type of songwriting. The hyper specificity is like, it feels like you're seeing that pop out a lot more. And if that's, which kind of makes sense. I've had this working theory of like, whatever the biggest thing is in music, the next biggest thing is probably going to be the antithesis of that thing. So if we're talking in country music, it's by and large, it's going to be these broad painting with broad brushes of these nostalgic, how the good old days type of things, the list type of songs, like and there's nothing wrong with those. But with that, and if they're going to be if you're going to have like, okay, like going from like when bro country was huge, we start seeing these like kind of 808s and trap beats, etc. Then the next big thing, then all of a sudden, like there's some stuff coming out, or that came out right after, that was really rooted in traditional country, Right. So like, and then when you looked at pop, I guess it would have been that early mid 2000s where it was kind of the stomp clap, like kind of folk stuff, like the Mumford stuff, the Lumineers stuff, very rootsy, very whatever. Then the tail end of that, right off of that, then it gets more electronic. You know what I mean? So it's like you just have these swings. So I'd be curious to see like what was happening, what was the biggest stuff in either country or rock right before these types of records came out in the 90s.
And I don't know either. I mean, we had like what has been deemed the great credibility scare in Nashville back in the day of Radney Foster and Steve Earle and Dwight Yoakam, all that kind of stuff was really, and that felt really exciting. I can remember thinking, oh man, this sounds like it had more in common with the Jayhawks and the Replacements and all that. And then, and of course it took off for a few, but it wasn't the next big thing. And then I was, in Nashville when a record, an A&R lady said to me, have you heard of the Music Mafia? And I'm like, I don't know what that is. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, right? She goes, you will. And I'm like, okay, And she's like, there's going to be a song coming. It's going to be this biggest thing on earth. By the time we got home from that run, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy came out. And we were the Big and Rich tune, you know, and we were all like, okay. I mean, that sounded crazy to me. It sounded like rap music, but it was in the country market. I never saw that coming up and it was huge.
Yeah.
And that, I think you're right. I think it's just this really weird cycle of things that happen. I'm hoping, I mean, we always hope that
it tips to one way, you know, there's got to be something that'll bring it back.
Yeah. And Whiskey Town did that, right? I mean, now I think if Whiskey Town came out now, even there'd be more of a market for it than there was then.
Yeah.
And the only one who really, I mean, if you say someone from that band really built off that, it was obviously Ryan Adams. I mean, he's the guy who built, but yet, I mean, Caitlin Carey's had some great bands with the original drummer, her husband, Skillet Gilmore. Those are killer records. But Ryan Adams was, and I knew, and you probably did too, both you guys who were listening to Whiskey Town back then, you knew he was gaining favor quick. Like they were talking up, you know, journalists were talking, magazine, it was, and he was precocious, this Ryan Adams character. He'd be drunk at a show. Remember when he was throwing people out for saying Bryan Adams?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it became a thing, man. It became this thing. And that Whiskey Town record is gold, man. I mean, Faithless Street's good, obviously. Oh my God, Stranger's Almanac. That's a great record too, dude, with a bunch of the songs that Ross just mentioned.
That's probably the one that everybody would reference, Stranger's Almanac, and then there's the deluxe version of that too. But
yeah,
for going back to these records of like the ones that kind of built me, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is like, holy shit, I remember, you know. So there's I had to like just like the Jayhawks answered too. It's like the Rainy Day Songs is probably that's probably a record I would listen to. It's not the first record that like really, you know, made me sink my teeth in. Also, again for you know, for brevity, it wasn't that nobody was listening to these albums where I was from. It was that subculture of the guys and gals that were listening to this music, it was very small. You know,
us too.
Lubbock is an island surrounded by dirt. There's nothing around it. So, you know, when your influence is, or when you're influenced by, you know, farm culture, ranch culture, like you're gonna get. And then you have Texas Tech there, so you have all these frat guys with guitars and whatnot. You're gonna get like, you listen to some of those old Pat Green records, and the songwriting's phenomenal. I mean, it really is great. It really is great. But that's what everybody was listening to. That's what everybody was listening to.
Yeah.
The old 97s were 5 hours away, and I guarantee you, like most people that I went to high school with probably didn't know who the old 97s were. You know,
right.
And it's
right.
Bands of all time.
Yeah.
The same band for 40 years. Like that doesn't happen.
That's a great band too. Yeah. My next pick was a band, again, all these bands were kind of in that circle, you know. There was the Jayhawks, and then I would see a show and the opening act would be another one of these type bands. And in I think it was around 96, it was the AM tour, Wilco's AM tour. They weren't big yet, so they were pretty accessible. I was talking to the bass player. He goes, if you like this music, my sister has a band called Blue Mountain. You should check them out. And that's probably one of the greatest alt country bands ever. You know, they were cool. They were like Crazy Horse a little bit, you know. Carrie Hudson.
No.
You've never heard of them?
No, but if I need, give me an album today and I'll listen to it.
I'll tell you what, if you listen to Dog Days by Blue Mountain, you'll love it. They were on that label too. I think they were on Roadrunner, which was like a metal label. King Diamond was on Roadrunner. But they were, he's, you know, the bass player for Wilco, who's still the bass player. John said, my sister's got this band. You got to check them out. What's that?
Blue Mountain put out a single 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, there you go. They're still, they've kind of ebbed and flowed. Carrie Hudson, the guitar player, still plays. I think he's in Mississippi. I think that's where they're from.
Gotcha.
Yeah, cool band. Dog Days was kind of for me the big record of theirs. Because that's what John said, check out that record, and I did. But yeah, I love Blue Mountain as an alt country band, and I don't even know, there's still the joke, alt country, whatever that is, right? Nobody really know, because to alt alternative to what, I mean,
Right.
again, it's so confusing. But for us, and like you said, that circle was so small. It was real I was really into it, so deeply into it. It was hard to find people who knew it. And then I was getting this magazine at the time, No Depression magazine, which was I had a subscription to it from, the first issue till I don't know when I quit getting it. But, I'd thumb through it, and there'd be like the town and country section was these little regional snapshots. And Blue Mountain was one of them one time, and another band on my list was. And I would seek them out. And at that time, pre-internet, you'd mail in like, hey, this band is selling their album in this magazine, and you'd buy it then. I'd buy the CD or maybe cassette even. And Blue Mountain was, and there were a lot of them. I mean, there were a lot of alt country bands that came and went, and a lot of, some were A tier, some were B tier, some were C, whatever. Those A tiers of the Jayhawks and the Whiskey Towns and the bigger alt country bands, I would definitely put Blue Mountain in with them. And you'll hear a lot of those guys reference Blue Mountain. So what do you got next, Scott?
I'm going to pair a couple Texas guys together here in the interest of time. David Ramirez, Fables.
Okay.
And Andrew Combs, All These Dreams. Those two records. David Ramirez, I can't say enough about David Ramirez. Him in the last 5 years, I mean, I listened to so much of, your records, Ross, David Ramirez, Andrew Combs, Brent Cobb. I can't stop listening to these guys. But Andrew's record, All These Dreams, is a masterpiece. That record is unbelievable. David Ramirez, as a songwriter, you're not going to get anything exciting musically really out of David Ramirez, but lyrically, my God, the man is a absolute savage.
Yeah.
And I should say this about Scott too. In most of our episodes around the genre of Scott is some sort of, and I don't know if Scott, if you have any connection other than musically to Texas, but
no,
I don't know, man. I feel like
I love Texas music.
I really feel like they owe Scott something over there, because Scott is forever. And I think about you, Scott, every time I hear the David Allen Co tune, Willie and Waylon and Me. What's the line in there? And they say Texas music. I always think of you, Scott, because you're always pushing great Texas artists. So yeah, Texas.
Ross, are you familiar with David Ramirez?
Yeah, but not until some of the until some of the later stuff, like I Want to Live in Your Bedroom, and it took me a while. I always kind of knew who he was. I'm not a good lead guitar player at all, but I used to like fill in and sub lead guitar for this guy who always had these like David Ramirez songs when I was in college. So,
okay.
Between 2009 and 2012. And I'd never heard of David Ramirez, and I'd have to learn all these songs. And all the songs were just badass. They were great songs.
I remember.
I don't know who this guy is.
I was super excited because a Texas guy that I liked for a long time, and he was mostly just a songwriter, but his name was Granger Smith.
Oh yeah.
He did a song called Stick Around by David Ramirez on a record like in 2013 or something. And
yeah,
I was like, holy shit, David Ramirez is going to blow up. But no, not really.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just the consistent. Let's see, what was the last that Lover Will You Lead Me song? It's
yeah,
I love that song. Like Jesus Murphy. It's such a he's such a good song. And I think there's a little bit of that Austinite type of ethos to, like, that's not dissimilar to like Bob Schneider, of really taking like production risks. And because at the root of it, even the Bob Schneider songs, it's like they're folky, like they're kind of folky, some more country leaning songs. And then but you listen to some Bob Schneider records and they're not country records at all. And and the same with David Ramirez too. It's like I love that I love some of the production choices,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's, you get really cool records that way.
Let's see, Ross, what you got next?
Okay, once again, going in chronological, we're gonna go with, this might be not a, there's people that would fight me on this, I think, but the hell with them, they're not on this podcast. So we're gonna go with Wreck Your Life from Old 97's.
Bullshit. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, because
That's a
it's a great record, but I think people would probably do fight songs next.
Fight
right?
songs.
or Too Far to Care.
Too Far to Care.
Or too far to care.
What's the one who they had a, now they're the Old 97's a great example. They pitched one to college radio pretty heavy. Remember 19?
Oh, that was
19?
Early 19. Yeah.
Yeah, they pitched that, and I feel like that wasn't on.
I think that might
was
have been
on
on Too Far to
Fight,
Care.
no, it was on Fight Songs.
Was it?
It was on Fight Songs.
So yeah, Too Far to Care is the one that was their third record. That's the one that like everybody
Right.
loves. Like everybody says that's the Old 97's record. I think it's great.
I do too.
But it's Wreck Your Life, starting with, we used to cover Victoria. That's the bet. I don't know if there's a better way to start off a record than starting it with that just guttural, it's the coolest record, and it's really raw and almost imperfect, and it's got great songs on it. It's just again, I like early records from bands that obviously they're so talented, but where the attitude is bigger than, there's like moments where the attitude is bigger than the talent. And
of course,
talent's huge. But and even like, again, Too Far to Care, phenomenal record. But like, I loved Satellite Rides. Satellite Rides,
oh yeah,
one of the best records ever made.
Yeah,
like I think it's got a Grammy nom, and I think most and I think probably a lot of Old 97's fans, especially of the earlier stuff, would call bullshit on that. But that is like, if there was ever a moment where Old 97's could have been one of the biggest bands in the world, outside of having Question was on that record. Throw that out. Like, yeah. Throw that out. Outside of having Question on that record, that was still maybe Old 97's best or biggest shot of becoming like a huge band.
Did that have that had Question on, but did that have like King of All the World on it? Roller Skate Skinny.
Yep.
Buick City Complex is on that. I love that
song on the record. Nervous Guy.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, but anyway, but as far as Wreck Your Life goes, let's see.
Record.
Wife.
Oh right, I got my wife. I got the Booze the Other Women and the WIFE or something like that. Isn't that on there?
Other Shoe, Doreen, it's huge.
Troubadours cover it. Turnpike Troubadours have a cover of Doreen on the record. Yeah, right. I love the 97s, man. I love that band.
Me too.
I had they were another one of, they were in the circle. They were in the circle of all the stuff I was listening to. They popped up Town and Country in No Depression magazine, the Old 97s.
Yeah.
And what a cool band. And this might be unpopular with Old 97s fans. I don't know. I've made more enemies on Scott's podcast here than anybody, but I will say this. I like those Rhett Miller solo records too.
Yes.
Those are pop gems, man. Those are power pop gems.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. The
he
Instigator.
was about, I was getting the feeling that he was moving. He was about to be the Ryan Adams of the old 97s. He was going to be the guy who jumped out and then he launched this solo thing and went and did that. But the problem is Rhett Miller in the old 97s, in the unit of the old 97s, the consistent unit of, I think they bring out the best in him.
Yeah.
And the old 97s have one of the best drummers on earth. I mean, Philip's one of the best drummers on. Nobody, my kid plays drums. He's 16 years old, and I still make him listen to the old 97s. And Scott will back me on this, because I think the most important thing you can have as a drummer is a solid train beat with brushes on a snare.
For sure.
And the old 97s have that in spades, man.
Yeah.
Repertoire, you know, but
it's ruthless.
Also, one of the things that made that, you know, one of the elements that made the sound so iconic was the harmony choices from Murray as well. And Murray, he had such a great voice, has such a great voice anyway. But some of the ooze that, you know, there's always the ooze that kind of are adding I'm not going to say a different dimension, but using it more like an instrument and then sweeping into a harmony and using it as a bed and a texture. It's
him by himself. It's not choir ooze. It's
one.
Just Murray.
It would dilute it if it was bigger than it was.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like a guitar line.
Yeah.
Yeah, what, man, old 97s, I could go on and on. In the interest of time, I'm throwing a couple together here. I love a band called Six String Drag from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Hi-hat.
Kenny Roby. Have you heard of
Six String Drag? What are these?
Yes. Six String Drag. So these guys are, again, one of these indie alt country showing up, Town and Country and No Depression, and eventually get signed by Steve Earle's label, E Squared.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was, here's that Ray Kennedy and Steve Earle went to, and I'm guessing it was probably South by Southwest, you know, one of these industry things. They went down there to sign Whiskey Town. They were looking at Whiskey Town. They heard Six String Drag, and Steve Earle said, let some neurotic A&R chick sign Whiskey Town. I want to make a record with these guys. And they make this record, Hi-Hat, with Ray Kennedy, who's a great record producer. You know, the Twang Trust was Steve Earle and Ray Kennedy doing records together. They did a band called the V-Roys. But Six String Drag's Hi-Hat record is Kenny Roby, the singer and songwriter for Six String Drag, probably one of the best working. My other band, who I don't know, they're like Crazy Horse at times. They can be sensitive, and they have some great ballads and killer rockers. They had a push for top 40 radio. They hit a couple, you know, college-y stations. The band Slobberbone, who I think are great band, who also hold the distinction of being the band that I've been in a room with a lot of loud bands, and we played a club with them, and it was small, dudes. It was a small joint, and they were wheeling. I watched Brent Best wheel in a fucking 412 and a Marshall head, and I went, I'd played through a fucking deluxe, you know, 22 watt deluxe, and was loud. These dudes cleared the room, cleared it. And I stayed the whole night. There were people going in the bathroom and coming out, wadding up toilet paper and putting it in their ears so they could stay. That was my drinking days too. So I rode that bitch right out. I rode that out.
Would your recommendation be Everything You Thought Was Right Was Wrong Today?
That's a great record.
That's a great record.
Barrel Chested is the one before that.
Yeah.
Both of those records are great.
Pearl Pop Pie.
They're a great band, and they have the best cover of To Love Somebody by the Bee Gees I've ever heard. I think it's killer. It's alt country. There's a light, a certain kind of light. I mean, it's killer. Yeah. What do you got next, Scott?
Reckless Kelly, Under the Table and Above the Sun.
It's a great band too, man. It's a great band too.
Now out of, I think, Austin, Texas now, but they're from Stanley, Idaho.
Yeah.
Just an unbelievable band. that they put together. The Braun brothers are all great. Yeah,
Great
I
band.
mean, you could go with any one of their records, but this was my introduction, and Let's Just
Oh yeah,
Fall, Nobody's Girl, all those tracks,
Dave.
Vancouver, Snowfall.
I just played with a band on guitar and they covered Nobody's Girl.
Oh,
That was a fun song to play.
To
Yeah.
cover it, my high school band. We
Cool
played
band.
a show with them at an amphitheater in Eufaula, Oklahoma,
Wow.
years ago. And just that the family relationship of music makers is always something really special to see. And
Always
then
very Oasis-y and Everly Brothers-y and
yeah, with
Black Crowes-y.
seemingly way less drama too, which
yeah,
is
the Braun brothers.
You know why? Because you can tell your blood to fuck off and you're still blood. That's the catch, man. Right? In your band, you gotta have some sort of politics because you're riding to the next gig. You can punch your brother in the face and get on with it. The Gallaghers and the Chris and Rich Robinsons of the world and Phil and Don Everly. You can just flat out, that's your kin, man. You can do what you want. You can't do that to the guitar player,
I always wanted to ask him off that record. There's a song called Snowfall, and so I grew up spending my winters in. We have a place in Ruidoso, New Mexico that actually just burned to the ground in the
Oh.
fires. Yeah, but so I've been obsessed with snowboarding since I was young. Anyway, there was all these old Warren Miller documentaries that anybody that is even close to like has any interest in skiing and snowboarding knows about the Warren Miller films. They're the coolest. But Snowfall was on one of those Warren Miller docs, and they were like always on cable. And I always wondered if they wrote Snowfall for that placement, if Warren Miller might have asked them.
Oh yeah.
Because it was such a yeah, like there's a throwaway line getting into the course. It's like, I'm gonna grab my gear and get out of here. When winter rolls around, I'm gonna head. I'm on my way to a western town. And so I would bet like $50 that they probably were asked to write that song,
like commissioned to write that for the.
And I love that song, and I love the war. Anyway, so little just kind of brought me back into being 15 again, or 14. 15.
So Ross, what do you got? We got lost. We were in slide. What do you got next? What do you got left, Ross? You got a couple?
Yep, I got Lay Low While Crawling or Creeping, which is a 2006 release from Thrift Store Cowboys. They were a band from Lubbock that they were kind of the first. They were kind of the first Lubbock band that was a national act that wasn't like Texas country. They kind of got their up and going along the same time that like Josh Abbott was another artist, a Texas country artist from Texas.
Yep.
He was kind of the Josh's career started in that and more of the straightforward Texas country scene. And Thrift Store were the alt country band, from Lubbock that were the one of those first bands that was kind of for industry speak, the left of center band, but what made them so special was, first of all of them are from Lubbock or there around, and they've, Daniel Flewitt, who is a lead singer and songwriter of the band, and Chris Killingsworth, the drummer, Tugboat, as everybody calls it. He plays drums now for Kyle Mix. But they're all from like Lubbock or some ranch towns around Lubbock. So their music sounds, it always sounded like a soundtrack for the landscape of that part of West Texas. It was like you could close your eyes and it sounded exactly how that part of the country looks.
Cool.
And then that's awesome. Shires had a couple of really good songs that she wrote on that record too that she's singing on. But Yeah, they were just that kind of first when everything was zigging, they were zagging.
Yeah.
I think they did that record in like Tucson, where like maybe Nico Case and some of that stuff.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
And it's kind of in that Calexico world, you know. I could be completely talking out of my ass. I don't think I am, but I don't remember who produced that record. But check out that record.
Yeah.
The focus track for me personally would be "Go Go You Coyotes" is my favorite song on that record.
All right.
But I mean, top to bottom, this record could release tomorrow and it would still be one of my favorite records.
Scott, you got one left?
I have one left.
What is
From
it?
Todd Daniel Snyder, Step Right Up, his second
Yeah,
record.
I love the Nervous Wrecks, man. That's where he hooked me. He hooked me
Yeah.
on that tour, man. He
I
hooked me on that
saw, I
tour.
was just talking about this with my wife last night. I saw Todd the very first time with the Nervous Wrecks, and then I never saw him again with a band. It was always just him barefoot and an acoustic.
That Nervous Wrecks lineup
Woo!
was burning, dude. That was a good. I just probably, I don't know. It's been a few years now, but I played that thing. God, it's coming up, Americana Fest or something in Nashville.
Yeah.
And Will Kimbrough was playing.
Yep.
Dude, you forget, man. That dude is, I mean, that's Guitar Hero stuff. He's a great player, and he was great in the Rex. And
He's a piece of work.
He's a piece of work, man. We're big Todd Snyder people at the NMD podcast for sure. And again, he's had moments that haven't really moved me. I mean,
right.
We say it about Ryan Adams too. I love Ryan Adams. You know, dude, not everything's a song. Some things are ideas, I guess. You know?
Yeah.
Right. But I Step Right Up's a great record, man. And I thought that was gonna I thought Step Right Up. There's a song on there called Horseshoe Lake.
That's my favorite.
I thought he was gonna cry. I thought he was gonna have a country hit. I thought that might happen. I think he was too unmanageable to have a country hit. I really do.
Ragweed tried to, Ragweed did a few of his songs on their records, and
I think
those
he was
guys,
unmanageable.
That's
Gary Allen's an all right guy, you know.
Yes, that's probably his close, right?
Gary Allen, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I think Mark Chestnut did a song too, didn't he?
Could be.
Did he do? He's a Texas guy, I think. Mark Chestnut.
He was a top 40 country dude, right?
Yeah,
he did Friends in Low Places the same time as Garth Brooks, and Garth got famous and he didn't.
Yeah,
right. That's right.
Because he released it on Too Cold at Home, which is a freaking gem of a record.
Huh. And so there was another Todd Snyder cover too.
But Cross Canadian Ragweed did I Believe You on a record as well.
That's a great song too off Step Right Up.
Lonely Girl.
Oh yeah.
And then didn't Chris Ledoux do Beer Run?
Yes.
That would have maybe been his biggest, maybe.
I mean, the dude's had it. Todd Snyder's, in my world, we like fame and success isn't like mansions and cocaine. For me, it's always he's a bus guy, man. He's got a bus. That's always like the Piedmont of success. Like he's Todd. Because when I saw the Nervous Rats, they were vanning it.
They were vanning, yeah.
They were vanning. So, Todd Snyder solo now, I think he's bussing. So something good has happened for sure. That John's world of success, Oh, you got a bus. Cool. Little do we know that that's all recoupable expenses. And that's why most of John's favorite bands are bankrupt. They're mostly bankrupt because I went, oh, you made it to a bus, and then they're bankrupt. I'm going to put my last two together real quick in the interest of time. This is pretty predictable. It's first wave alt country, but Lucinda Williams' Sweet Old World is still, I don't care what name a genre. It's the best record. It's one of the best records ever made, in my opinion. She's such a great writer. The new stuff off Rock and Roll Heart is good. Sweet Old World, though, is like next level stuff. Is really next level writing. The recording's a little dated. I've tried to pick out the guitar and tell you it's super glassy and clean. Like it's either like a super clean twin reverb or something, or a solid state like a Roland JC 120 or something. It's real glassy, clean guitar sounds. And then, of course, I'm going to throw these guys out. I was grossly late to the game, and some guitar student back in, I swear to God, the 90s tried to turn me on. 90s, 2000s tried to turn me on, and I missed it. But I'm a big Lucero fan. I think Lucero's a great band, and one of those go-to bands in the genre who are, again, Ross mentioned the road dogs, right? You can still build it if you can do it. Yeah. If you can go out like that and do it, you can build it. But it's a tough way to do it.
They were just here last weekend in Michigan, but I went and saw Brent Cobb, so I had to choose.
It's just you can do it, man. You can do it. You can go out and build them one at a time on the road, but the expenses are different now. The accommodations are different. The venues are different. You couldn't eke out a little circuit back in the day of mid-size alt country friendly venues. Big cities had them. St. Louis had a couple of them. You could go play off Broadway. Cicero's and all these places, and a lot of them don't exist anymore. The Lounge Acts in Chicago, you could go play, and they're all gone. Those venues are now.
There's still Carol's Pub in Chicago too. There's
still. Cool. I think is Joe's on Weed Street still in Chicago.
Oh yeah,
that's still a venue.
I've played Carol's. I hadn't played Joe's.
Yeah, good places to. I'll tell you what, though, just like Scott Benting here, if you're building fans in those places at your live show and they buy a record, those people will go back home the next day and they will be telling people about it. It's a tough way to do it, right? A TikTok, cajillion people at a time, way easier method for sure. Going viral or something. But yeah, that was so Lucero was my last one. I mean, I don't know what my favorite Lucero record is. The first one I ever
Texas and Tennessee.
Actually, that much further west is what caught me.
Yeah.
And it's because I was on my way home that night and heard The Only One off that record. And I never do that. And I came home and found it. Like before I went to bed, I sat out in the garage and found it and listened and went. Then by morning, I owned 3 Lucero records, because they were so good. Yeah. So that was my last one.
Years ago, right. Among the Ghosts. That was a 2018 record. I thought that.
Yeah. Great record, man. Is that the one? What's the single off is that got Long Way Back Home on it? I think
Yep.
Yes, that's a killer tune, man. Great video, like a little movie video. Really cool. I like Lucero. My son liked him for a second. Now he hates him because I played him too much, and he can't warm up to the voice. A lot of people can't warm up to the voice. Yeah. The beautiful thing about this alt country genre is you don't have to be a great singer, man. You got to be able to write for the most part, but you don't have to be, Whitney Houston or Celine Dion.
Art should be polarizing.
Well, right. Good. Then I must like a lot of art because I have my own family or like, this is terrible shit you're listening to today.
It should elicit. Well, it should elicit a big response.
Right. Don't they say if you're it's each side of that. If you're just turning people off left and right, you're doing something right, and if you're pulling them all in, you're doing something right. Right. That's how it should be. The middle of the road's probably a gross place to be anyhow. All right, what do you got, Ross?
Very last one. I don't know if you'd consider it. I don't know if it falls under alt country or not.
We'll tell you. We're the gatekeepers of that. We'll tell you what. Yeah. Obviously, Scott and I will let you know if this is acceptable or not.
This is I kind of purposely saved this for last two, not just because of chronology, but because it's one of my favorite records of all time from a great friend of mine. But the record is The Last American, and it's Ryan Colwell, and it was released in 2018.
That record is that the one where he's like blindfolded on the cover?
No, it's him and his daughter.
Yeah.
Yep. When they were still living here.
I love that record.
It's top to bottom. I don't know that a better top to bottom album has been released in 10 years. Like, I mean, it's that good, and it's and yeah, it's a hill that I would die on.
What was your argument or concern that it might not be alt country? Is it
Just
too much top
no,
40? Not top 40,
no,
but you know what I mean? Too
no,
polished or too rock?
no, that just that at what year do we stop calling it alt country and start calling it Americana?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Right. Yeah, good. Oh, well, we will probably be able, Scott and I will define that as well. It was this year. No, I don't know what. Is Americana and alt country the same thing now?
I mean, I think that
Pretty much.
No. Yeah, I guess. I mean,
I think Americana is probably the bigger umbrella, you know,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
because there's not an alt country music association. But
Oh, right. Yeah. Right.
even like, you know, the metropolitan stuff still falls under Americana. You know, like I think Americana is probably the bigger umbrella. I think that there's a lot of people that would argue vehemently against that, which I understand.
I don't know, man. We called it cowpunk originally.
Yeah,
that's what we thought it was. It was cowpunk.
That's what I'm saying. I bet that there's probably some cowpunk bands out there like, don't call our shit Americana. We don't.
Yeah, right. Right. I bet
the Mavericks are not an Americana band. Yeah,
I know
right.
for a fact that if you were to ask Ryan if his music's Americana, he'd be like, I don't know, man. They're just songs.
My music. Yep, they're just this is just stuff I made up. Or call it what you want.
He'd say that it's country music. But this to me is it's a masterpiece of a record. I think his Red River record it came out maybe mid 2000s. Was the album that like Rolling Stone called, you know, one of the top 50 folk records of all time. But this album, it's a perfect record. It's a perfect record, top to bottom. I'm very partial. I'll admit that, but I'm very thankful to get to be in a time in my life where my favorite music is music that my friends have put out, not on the merit of them being my friend. You know,
yeah,
right.
And he's working on a new album with, I think, with a similar cast of characters that made this record. He put out a album last year or year before last called Run Like a Bull, or Run Like Bull. But yeah, this album, I was in Turkey, Texas last week, and I recorded a live acoustic album. Nobody knows about it, and I did it because I wanted to. You know, there's not a line around the block of people waiting on a live acoustic album from me. But
look at Benting. I was just gonna say Benting's all nervous. He got a nervous stomach right now. He's so excited. I guarantee it.
I'm so excited about it. And you know, last September I put out Lightning Heart, which was my favorite thing that I've ever recorded. Favorite thing, more than I Rode the Wild Horses, more than anything else, my favorite thing I've ever recorded. And it fell flat, and we had a team behind it, and that's what records do. You know, there's more records that don't pop off than the ones that do. And man, there was just, it kind of, for the first time, and I'm a pretty positive guy, but for the first time, it kind of sent me into this thing of like, Jesus Christ, like, what are we doing here? You know? And I had to like take a step, you know, just kind of put my arms out and push off just for a second and breathe. And so I made this record, and I was like, I want to make an acoustic record in Turkey, Texas, because it's kind of become this oasis in the panhandle where West Texas and the panhandle meet. And it's kind of like that area of the state's version of Lukenbach, but taking on identity all its own and become this really special place that that all these songwriters have been going to and playing shows at, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that I will be the first, but I won't be the last to have made this acoustic album. And then, so we record the album, and just me and old guitar player and a buddy playing mandolin and dobro.
Oh, nice.
And into a room of 50 people, and you know, just a very storyteller, songwriter type of record. Anyway, so it all kind of just goes off without a hitch. Like, it couldn't have, you know, there's so many things that I guess could have gone wrong, and it didn't. And so at the end of that night, we're kind of just passing around the guitar. Me and my old guitar player, his name's Mike Dunton. He now plays guitar for a rock and roll artist named Paul McDonald. And then my friend Charlie Stout, who's a phenomenal songwriter, who his biggest cut is with the Panhandlers, and with the song called West Texas in My Eye. And then Ryan Cole. Yeah.
Love that. That's a great record.
Yeah. And Ryan's there. And then our new friend Jenny Mack, who plays accordion for Asleep at the Wheel. And
oh, wow.
We're in a town, we're in this little house in a town of 317 people. And some of the most talented people that I know in my life, even after having lived in Nashville for 13 years, some of my favorite, most talented people are all in this little room in this little house in this little town. And it's like, sometimes you need these reminders that the magic is still out there and that you're on the path that you're supposed to be on. And it was one of those moments. And some of the best music that I've heard in a long time, I've just been able to sit back and listen to all of their songs, being played on the same acoustic guitar. It was like, oh my God, this is what it's about. And these are some of the most talented people I know. And Ryan being in that room and getting him to play some of my favorite songs from The Last American, it was just it was definitely a moment. And the songs hold up. The songs just hold up, phenomenal.
That's the test, man. That's the test. Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this, Ross. Thank you for your time. I know you're busy. Thank you for certainly, taking the time with us, for sharing your art with us, for, again, I will tell you, you have advocates here at the NMD podcast, and we're so full of ourselves that we like to think that the stuff we like is based on more than cool clothes and what someone's doing, what the trend of that day is. And that's for sure. I would say Scott and I both base the stuff we like on an emotional connection to us. You would agree with that, wouldn't you, Scott? And that holds true for us, I think, from the first Van Halen record to Whiskey Town's Faithless Street. It doesn't matter to us as long as it connects in that way we're in. And we appreciate artists like you so much. And so certainly those moments, I'm sure, come where you're questioning what the hell am I doing here? Please know that there are folks who count on your art to move us through our days. So thank you for that very much. And thanks for being with us today. Scott, you got any words of wisdom to leave us with today?
This is just personal from me. Ross Cooper should be playing the Grand Ole Opry and the Ryman, and a lot of these clowns on country radio should be setting pins in a fucking bowling alley. See you next time, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later. Thanks again, Ross.
Much.
See you guys.
Yeah.